Okay, short introduction to the employment cycle. This is our next topic in our syllabus and our last topic of the semester. Of all the things that could happen, we made it to the end of the semester somehow. Okay, so first, let me get you to consider, get your books out. Books, it's chapter 9, page 101. 101, that's a lot of pages. Did we do that many pages? It doesn't feel like it. Feels like we just got started. Page 101, chapter 9 says employment cycle. So for the next, and this is related to organizational structures in some ways. It's also related to, we looked into unfair dismissal of employees. So we have some other elements that it's connected to. And it goes through 4 parts. There's 4 parts, the employment cycle. Processes and cycles. A cycle means that it's like the beginning and the end, right? We have 2 kinds of cycles, we might call it the life cycle. We have the product life cycle, that means it lives and dies, and then we have these cycles, and usually cycles go in a circle. Human resource management is the topic. HR, human resource management, means finding employees. These days, the process is very legal. There's a lot of law involved with finding employees, especially in Australia. Certain very specific guidelines have to be followed in order to hire and fire people. The employment cycle, we'll just get into it, has 4 parts, which you'll have to remember. The employment cycle consists of the stages in organizing all aspects of employment of staff, from deciding on the staffing needs of the business and recruitment, through to the termination process of the contract or agreement. The employment cycle involves a number of stages, the completion of which should lead to a happy and productive workplace with employees who enjoy their work. Sometimes. But that's not the main point. Right now, the main point, motivation we're going to do at the beginning of next semester. But for now, you're just supposed to kind of look at how the steps of the process fit together. You're trying to imagine what elements are going to make the business successful in its attempt to find employees that fit the company, and look at what points there might be cost involved. And because our goal really in almost everything we do, including motivation, should be to maintain quality staff. Because it's very expensive to find new people that are good, most of the time. So, the first part is called acquisition. So each one of these parts has different subheadings below it. Acquisition, to acquire, is a verb to get. To go and to get something is to acquire employees. When you have your employee, you'll find, much like I found after I graduated from university, is that most of my employers didn't really care too much about what I learned in university. They were more interested in training me themselves to do things in the way that their corporate culture called for. Okay, so each business has a culture, a way of doing things, and if you come out of university and you try to tell them how to do things, they're going to look at you like, really? We're an actual business and you're coming here as your first job interview and you know more than us? So typically employees will be brought into the company and trained, etc. That's called development, employee development. Then we're in the stage where we want to keep employees for the long term and we want to keep them productive as well. And that's called maintenance. Maintain is the verb. So we have acquire, develop, maintain. To maintain something means to keep it going. So what kinds of things will make employees interested in staying? And that's also, there's a lot of motivation there. Separation can happen for many different reasons, 4 main reasons, but separation is however the organization and the employee decide to part ways and the relationship ends. So, yeah, so there you go. Just like any relationship really, right? You find someone, develop your relationship, get married, maintain it, and separate. There's a few ways to separate. How do they define it in the book? Acquire encompasses predicting the business's needs for staff, which is what I'm going to talk about today, and a bit about attracting the best employees in order to meet the goals of the business. Development involves inducting new employees into the business and providing ongoing training as employees and the business develop and grow together. Maintenance requires the business to continue to offer employees the conditions and support necessary to retain, keep them in the workplace. Contracts, also a big part of that. Separation is the final stage of the process where somehow the employee leaves the business. There are steps involved. When we look at the acquisition process, it goes through quite, when you look at acquisition, you can see here that it goes pretty far from 102 to 108. It's a big section. Acquisition is probably the hardest part. It's also expensive, right? This is why we want to maintain our staff. It's very expensive to, advertise, to spend the time, to interview, to train new employees. So, we'll start with the beginning here. It says staffing needs. Staffing needs. In our second semester, we're going to take your plans, your marketing plans, and we're going to expand them to a business plan. And in that case, you're going to have to find some staff. You're going to have to identify the staffing needs that you might have. So if you're a restaurant, you have to think about everything from the chefs to the parking attendants, to the security, cleaning. There's a lot of different kinds of staff that you'll need. And that's just the day-to-day operation staff. I'm not even talking about management, administration. So there's a lot of staff that you need. You have to be able to estimate or guess the number of staff that you need. So I'll let this first part play out. Planning. This is not a bad channel because it's Australian and it's from Victoria, so many of the same laws for Australia apply to Western Australia as Victoria. So we can use this website in the future. It's called VCE Business Management.
We've broken outcome 1 into 3 parts. So this is the second part, which is the employment cycle. So we're still in the area of study 1, but we're just breaking it into 3 parts, and this is the second part. So the employment cycle is the stages an organisation progresses through in order to hire an employee all the way through to when an employee actually leaves the organisation, for whatever reason that is, whether that's they retire, they're fired, whatever reason. And there's 3 main stages of the employment cycle, and they are the establishment phase, maintenance phase, and termination phase. So we're going to start off with the establishment phase, and there's certain parts to that, different parts to that. So what it is, it's all the activities which involved in the actual beginning of the relationship. So human resources is managing the relationship between the employer and the employee. The establishment phase is what the organisation does and the HR manager does in order to begin that relationship. So they're the activities that we're going to go through. In this video, we're going to look at human resource planning. So, human resource planning, now that being the top left-hand corner, that's just so you know that we are still in the establishment phase. So that E stands for establishment. So human resource planning is the process of anticipating the future staffing needs for an organisation. Now that could be that they actually need more, that they don't need quite as many, depending on what the actual goals and the strategic direction of the organisation is. HR planning is deciding on how many employees do we need, how many of what type of employees, so what qualifications do they need, where do they need to be, those kind of things. So human resource managers need to plan the actual positions that become vacant, so if someone leaves the organisation. So do they, first of all, they need to decide, do they need to fulfil that role, or will they not fulfil that role? If there are too many employees, then obviously there's unnecessary wage costs. Wages for large organisations cost organisations lots and lots of money. So having too many of them is just going to reduce your productivity by having unnecessary wage costs. And again, if there's not enough employees in the right places, then you won't be able to complete work within a timely manner. So it's important that you need to have the right number of employees, you need to have them in the right place, and you need to have employees with the right qualifications, skills and knowledge in the right place. That's even more important. So let's look at an example of Coles. So initially Coles, well they still do have, but this is before all the self-service checkouts. This is where you used to bring all your goods up and someone would check them through the checkout for you. And that was the only way of actually purchasing your goods. So when that was the case, and this is just an example, they may need various number of employees. Then the strategic direction of the organisation changed, and they went to self-service checkouts. Now they still do have the other checkouts, I understand that, but with the self-service, they may go, well, because customers are actually checking themselves out, we might not need as many checkout employees. So they need to plan for that. So that's just a basic example where there's been a strategic change in the organisation, and they need to then decide, right, how many of each employee do we need? Another example, Arafura Resources, is that they mine uranium, and they were looking at building a new facility to mine uranium in Whyalla in South Australia. So they were expanding. This is a major expansion, $1 billion project, and they needed to decide, right, how many office staff do we need, in what areas and what qualifications do they need, how many actual mining employees do we require, what engineers and how many engineers do we need and where do they need to go, and truck drivers, and obviously there'd be thousands of other employees. But in doing that, they need to, the strategic plan has been a major change. They're looking to expand and build $1 billion plant in Whyalla. They need to decide what are their human resource needs. They need to plan that out, because then they need to go and hire them. They need to interview, go through the interviews and all those kind of things. But the first process they need to do is decide what jobs do we need to fulfil and how many of each job. So just to recap, human resource planning is the first stage of the employment cycle, and that is to plan human resources. So looking at things, how many of each employee do we need, where do we actually need them, what qualifications do they need, what skills and knowledge do they need, and actually when. So if you look at Arafura Resources, when do they actually need them? It's going to be 5 years down the track before they could actually build the plant. So it was a major, lots of time to plan, big strategic plan. So that's planning human resource needs. For videos, practice Sax and more, go to teachingbubble.com.
What is that guy talking about? Alright, he talks too fast. I will say that. I mean, at least you can read it, but he does talk way too fast. He's like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of people trying to take notes. I mean, it's not even about language. It's like people trying to take notes. It's like, what's the hurry? Are you running out of time, sir? Anyway, he's not wrong, but like I said, he's way too fast. All right, so I will go slightly slower. Identifying your staffing needs. Yes, he is correct when he says that timing is also important, or else you hire somebody and you waste their time and your time, and if they're not ready or you're not open yet, and it's a new business, then you're burning through cash. There are definitely automation changes happening in the employment world. His example he showed was a supermarket with a checkout. That was you do your self-service checkout, so you don't need as much staff. So I don't know what point he's trying to make, except that you may have less staff if you automate. But still, you need to plan, so it doesn't matter how many staff you need, you still have to guess correctly. Staffing needs, page 102. Acquisition involves predicting the business needs for staff and trying to attract the best employees to meet those goals. The acquisition process includes evaluating staffing needs, analyzing jobs, recruiting, and selecting employees finally. Staffing needs, page 102. The business needs to plan for staffing needs to plan for needs, and must ensure that all requirements are identified. You don't want to forget anyone important. If you're really sophisticated or a good human resource manager, you'll recognize that you want to have at least 2 people who can do every job in case one person is unavailable. The human resource manager must consider how to predict the possible business requirements, busy times, busy seasons, holidays, likely market supply, demand for employees, supply of employees, demand for business, and look for the supply of suitable employees, which means that if you're looking for airline pilots, for example, you don't have many choices. You're probably going to have to hang around the pilot school and put up it's cheap, probably, because you just say, this is the one school where they train pilots, and I'm an employer of pilots. So you don't have to find people out of a crowd. You know where they are, but you have to give them something attractive. And you really have to ensure that they're safe pilots in order to fly. So there's a lot of, imagine being a human resources manager for an airline must be very, very complicated and stressful in the process of interviewing. Every day you're responsible for every flight in the sky that the pilot that you hire flies. Yes. Anyway, there's a supply of pilots and it's very small, so it's very competitive to get the best pilots probably. The business can forecast its requirements. This will ensure that managers are less likely to be caught by surprise when employee turnover occurs. Employee turnover. We're going to see that phrase come up many, many times. Turnover just means going in and out of somewhere. So if someone talks about turnover in a restaurant, that's how many customers go in and out. Employee turnover would be how many employees go in and out. This is also something that you would use as a KPI. KPI is a measurement of performance, and so you would check every year, what is our employee turnover? This year, it was 20%. Last year, it was 10, so it's worse. We have to hire 10% more employees this year. So it's going in a bad direction. Or maybe it's going in a good direction. Maybe last year was 30% and this year is 20% and we're doing something right and we're keeping more staff. But we're trying to limit employee turnover. Requirements that may also be predicted by a change to individual businesses include retirements. So this is the HR manager, when they're looking at the long term, they also have to predict what's going to happen with management and who's going to continue into the future, which includes retirements. Some people have promotions. Some people are planning on taking holidays. In Australia, they get long holidays. Sometimes they get like 9 weeks. So I don't know what you do when your employee leaves for 9 weeks. Potential production process changes. So if you go from a supermarket with people to a self-service supermarket, expansion or contraction of sales. Requirements that can impose change from the outside the individual business are all the pest factors. Pest can also determine economic factors, social changes, cultural changes, that's both S, technological changes, T, and political climate, P. Why don't they just say pest? The business can forecast the likely supply by looking at the available graduates in certain programs. If you need scientists or you need police, maybe there's a police academy. Information such as the number of people graduating from relevant university, tertiary courses, movements of employees within the business, and past trends in attrition. God, they're using weird language. Attrition means turnover. In this case, employee turnover. Will assist in this. Succession planning, another new term to highlight. Succession planning means like a king. What happens when the king dies? Typically, when a king dies, they plan to have the next in mind, usually the son of the king. That's succession. In a business, you'll have succession planning for be the replacement for certain employees that you need to, important employees especially. So you have to have, that's why I said that it's a good idea to have at least 2 people who can do each position, because in that case you won't ever be stuck completely without a sushi chef, right? Imagine you only have 1 sushi chef working in your Japanese restaurant. That's gonna be bad if they're sick or something happens. Where are you gonna go and find a quick sushi chef? Sushi chef, sushi chef. In any event, you have to be aware of all the things that can happen. It's a little bit like environmental, understanding the environment of what's happening in the business. A lot of people think HR is simpler than that. They don't think that, oh well, you have to understand all the needs for the business. But it's a lot of factors come into play. Okay, then you have a list of jobs, whatever it is. Waiter, janitor, chef, line cook, the cashiers, whatever. You have a list of all these jobs, and according to Australian law, you are required to have something called a job description. But to make that job description, you have to understand the job. So you undertake something called a job analysis. So you have to go and find out, even from staff. Sometimes you're not sure exactly everything that's involved in a job. So like I said, by law, when an employee looks for a new job, they have to, they get something called a job description. By law, it tells them their tasks, the expectations of the job, everything they're required to do. But in order to figure that out, you better be accurate and do a good job analysis. I'm on page 102. A job analysis involves identifying and describing a job. This includes the tasks, highlight, knowledge, skills, right? So whatever informational background requirements. And it also considers the working conditions of the job. So that means any equipment, uniforms, protective equipment, uniforms, what possible dangers or hazards could be attributed. Now, let's take a general job, let's just say grab bike driver. I'm trying to hire a grab bike driver. Their tasks include picking up and taking customers to destinations. Also includes having some knowledge. I mean, if you live in the world before Google Maps, you have to know the city. You would have to know the city. Now anyone can be a Google driver. It's just like plugging them into a machine and they just follow the map. But if you were a taxi driver in New York City 15, 20 years ago, you have to know a lot about where to drive in the city in order to be a good taxi driver. So that's an example of changing requirements of knowledge. Now the drivers can be from Dong Nai, and then they can work in Saigon, and they don't really need to know Saigon. They just can look at the Google Maps, and then they are solved as far as their skill requirements. In addition, working conditions, okay, very important. Safety is a huge story for the grab bike drivers. They have to follow certain principles of maybe hygiene or safety. They cannot drink alcohol on the job before. The grab bike drivers, the stay-home drivers, many times I see that they've been drinking alcohol before they do their job. So the working conditions, though, also require safety on the part of the bikes and the company, too. So there's a lot about working conditions that would go into that job. A job description is the result of a job analysis. That is the goal of a job analysis, is to create the job description. So one is like market research, and the job description is the marketing, is the strategy, the result of the analysis. Job analysis, page 103, enables the HR manager, human resources, to ensure that the workplace is fair. So because we create these job descriptions, everyone knows what their expectation is. People who have the same job description should have the same salary, and they should be treated fairly. And so it helps in a lot of ways. It helps the business to have these job descriptions, so everybody thinks it's fair, right? The workplace is equitable, that employees are fairly paid, and that they can be updated. And that if there's any changes in the workplace environment or job description, that can be taken into account. And then the employee can say, hey, look, I'm doing all these extra things that aren't really part of my job. I should get paid more, for example. In order to analyze a job, the manager will firstly collect a range of information related to the job, and the employees also who perform the work. So they'll have to interview employees. Information is gathered from employees or the job holders through interview process and a survey, and also informal conversations, probably research of other companies as well. You can do secondary research, as well as primary. So we're looking at the steps of the analysis process. We will select a job, grab bike driver, determine the types of information to be gathered based on skills, tasks, and working conditions. Identify who those people will be who are going to give us that information. That's step 3. Then we'll do the research, primary research, unless we need to do secondary research, the same kind of surveys, market research, observations. We can use observations of people working. Maybe a diary, meaning that the worker will write down their daily activities so they can be checked and accounted for. Evaluate the information, step 6 and step 5 and 6. It's just, the editor of this book is so lazy. I can't believe they get paid for this book. Step 6 says step 5 says step 6 says step 6. Anyway, step 5, evaluate the information and write the job description. That's it, right? Let's look at the example before we go on. Bill Clinton, former president of the United States of America, is the owner of a chain of comic shops. I bet you didn't know that. He is completing a job analysis of a shop, I think this is a good example, of a shop assistant position required in each store. He gathered the information about the task, knowledge, skills, and working conditions. First, task. What do they do? Receiving. Receiving means that you take the deliveries and orders. So you have to be, very careful and detail-oriented to make sure that you check every single comic book and you check it, what it's the same as the order. Barcoding means to price them, to put prices, to put them into the computer and to put them into the shelves, to arrange the shelves so the new stock is visible for the customers. When customers want to buy, processing those purposes. Also, some other tasks include cleaning the store, maybe setting up window displays, locking the store at night, making sure everything is set up, the alarm system, whatever. So lots of tasks. The knowledge. I don't want somebody who knows nothing about comic books working in my comic book store. So my assistant should have some idea about the history or the contents of some comic books, characters, history, whatever, and has the ability and understanding of how to do research. I think that's a skill. And to find requests. Other skills would be computerized cash register, how to use the cash register correctly, not to mention the barcoding machine, and other computer skills probably, likely, accounting, maybe some customer service skills as well. Don't be terrible to everyone. So the working conditions of this job may create problems such as, it's too much standing or sitting at a counter, having to lift heavy boxes. You have to look at how heavy the boxes. Do they need certain equipment to move the boxes? Do they need a ladder to stock the shelves? Is there anything else they need? Example though, with a grab bike driver. Now, there's no laws in Vietnam that are going to protect these grab bike drivers. But I think in the United States, they would probably, after some time period of working like this, you keep using your wrist like this, you can get an injury, like a tennis player can get an injury to their wrist or elbow, and that's called repetitive stress syndrome. So I think that, as a condition of work, if I was going to have this kind of driver, I think I might put a limit on how many hours they can work in a row. Like maybe you find out that physically, if someone uses this muscle for more than 3 or 4 hours at a time, they need to take a rest. So you might want to break things down into 3 or 4 hour shifts instead of having drivers work for 8 hours. So that's another possible consideration of the working conditions of the employees. So safety of the employees, and also you're protecting yourself because it could lead to some kind of lawsuit in the future if your employees are injured. I think we can look at, not recruitment, not induction, job analysis. We can look at this for a little bit. I'll set it up.
Welcome back. This video is going to look at job analysis and job design. So once the human resources have been planned and decided how many people we need in what areas and when we need them, we need to then decide, all right, what's the actual job, what does the job entail, and who is the best person to actually fit that job. So that's the next job, and that's where job analysis or job design comes in. So first of all, if the job already exists, then we can analyse the current job to find out what that actual role entails. So you look at the type of duties that need to be performed, how long each duty takes, who the actual role, who they report to, who they're responsible for, all those types of things. You can also look at, then decide what kind of person would best suit that actual job. Now, if the job is being created, so it's a new job, then you can do a job design. And so you're essentially designing a new role. So that's where you decide what roles, tasks and responsibilities that the new job will actually entail. And
I don't think I'm going to go through this whole video, but I will say that there's some good notes in here. Maybe there's a place where they can separate the notes from the video, which would also be good. I would say that he is correct, and you should consider motivation and job satisfaction when you're creating a job, designing a job. Job description here, they're going to make a couple more definitions. Job description is a summary of the duties, tasks, and responsibilities, which is compared to a job specification, which is a list of the key qualifications, skills, experience, and knowledge required to perform the job. So these documents are there to help the person who's looking for employees to know what they're looking for. So this one, the job specification is for the HR department, and the job description is for the employee, so they understand their job. That's important. I would highlight that, and I'll put this video up. This is an example of a job description, but it's way too long. But you can see how much is there. It's right. It says the job, the key responsibilities, the requirements of the job, very, very detailed. The role in the company, the key responsibilities, the requirements of the job. I think they're a little bit shocking, and there's some things that are more important than others, right? Communication skills, in this case, communicate well in English, some kind of graduate degree, so master's, at least 5 years of experience in the position. So that's a very, very detailed job description. I will throw that up there into the classroom, and then I'll highlight this job design on page 105, because I think that should come before job description. Job design. This is the process of creating a position or changing an existing job. A job should be designed to meet the skills and knowledge gap identified in the business and include duties, pay, and opportunities that will attract quality applicants. Some companies already have a lot of people who want to work for them. Famous companies like Google have long lines of potential employees. This analysis and planning will help the business to identify the right skills and knowledge and the right people by answering the following questions. Will the job description meet the business needs? Will the job contribute to achieve the long-term goals? Are there any legal requirements in this job? For example, licenses for a lawyer or a doctor or a grab bike driver? So that's going to be under job specifications too, right? You want to have this, what actual qualifications that they should have. And then what do we need to worry about in our recruitment policies, which means trying to find someone, which I'll talk about next class. So a job analysis leads to a job description. Even though there are job specifications that are internal to the company, the job description is there to use for the advertising of the job as well. Job descriptions are detailed outlines, I'm on page 104, outlines of the work involved in a particular position within the business. Every business should have, and legally is required to have, a role or job description for each position to ensure that each employee is fully aware of their role and responsibilities. When recruiting new staff, the recruiter is able to refer to this to match any applicant to a specific job. A job description includes the title, assistant manager, the aims or objective of the job, to take care of the night crew at Kentucky Fried Chicken. The specific tasks and duties of the job are to manage the staff and to make sure that there's enough chicken at all times and that all of the hygiene laws are followed and that the business closes on time. Relationship of the job to others in the business. The manager, the assistant manager reports to the head manager, and they have other people under them, like 10 people per shift. The skills and knowledge require an understanding of the processes of production of food in a fast food restaurant and some, let's say, communication skills and management experience. What equipment will be used when performing a job? Mostly computer skills. Structure of the department. There are 3 levels in the department. There's the head manager, the shift manager or assistant manager, and the staff or line employees. The salary offered for that is $20 million a month. The organizational chart outlining where the job fits. So some of those kind of repeat a little bit, but in general, that's the job description for assistant manager at a fast food restaurant. So of course you want to have these questions that follow on page 104. I'll just save them for review for now, and that'll be all for today. We're just going to start with the introduction to the employment cycle and human resource acquisition phase.